This lesson introduces graphing in 2 dimensions. The statistics that we've done so far has focused on data sets where each data point is one number. For example, the scores on a certain test. Some data, however, are better represented by a pair of numbers. For example, you might want to study how people's time studying affects their score on a test. So each piece of data might be hours of studying, comma, score on the test. In order to represent data that involves pairs of numbers, you need to use not a number line, but what we call a Cartesian plane, which is what you see in front of you. So one variable will be graphed along the horizontal axis, and the other variable along the vertical axis. Okay, so just a few definitions, terminology. We usually call the horizontal axis the x-axis, so I'll label that. This right here is the x-axis. And typically the vertical one we label the y-axis. Notice that the two axes separate the plane into 4 regions or quadrants. This quadrant right here we call quadrant 1, and typically we use Roman numerals. We proceed counterclockwise, that means the opposite of the way a clock moves, and this is quadrant 2. Then this one is quadrant 3, and then this one down here is quadrant 4. Okay, so suppose you wanted to show the following: 3, 2. Well, the first number always tells you where to go along the horizontal axis. So I come out 1, 2, 3 units out here, and then the second number is 2, so I go up 2. So 3, 2 is in the first quadrant. Now, suppose on the other hand, I wanted to graph, say, a point over here. What pair of numbers is represented by that point? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units to the left, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you might be tempted to say 8, 5, but 8, 5 would be over here in the first quadrant somewhere. The way you get into the second quadrant is by making your first coordinate -8. So that says to the person graphing, go back 8 or left 8 and up 5. Okay, how about down here in the third quadrant? What do you think the coordinates of this point would be? Well, always start here in the middle. We call this the origin. And you go 2 units to the left. So it's got to be -2, otherwise you'd be going 2 units to the right. So -2, and then it's down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to use a -5 to tell someone I want the point to be down rather than up. Okay, and then lastly, sometimes we have points in the fourth quadrant. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that was 8 units to the right, so +8 works just fine. And 1, 2, 3 units down, so -3. Now, could there be a point that was not in any of the 4 quadrants? How could that happen? Well, if you put a point on the axis, on one of the axes, it's not really in a quadrant. The coordinates of that point, well, how far to the right or left do I go? Nowhere, so that's 0. And then I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 0, 6. Similarly, there might be a point that wasn't in a quadrant because it was on the x-axis. To reach that point, starting from the origin, I got to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 units to the left, so -12. And then how far up or down? I didn't go anywhere, 0. Anytime one of your coordinates is a 0, it means it's going to be on either the x or y axis, and it's not in a quadrant. Okay, that's the basic idea. Pretty short one, for this evening's tutorial. On this page is your homework. So get a piece of graph paper. Don't do this on notebook paper. Get some graph paper. And the first thing you'll need to do is, well, for example, your graph paper, let's see, do I have it in here? Your graph paper looks like that. It doesn't have axes on it. So the first thing you'll need to do is sketch over some of the lines on the paper there to make your axes. And then once you have those, graph all of these points in on the same graph. So when you're done, it will look something like what we had on the previous page. Like that. You're going to have one graph with a bunch of points on it. Okay, and then I want you to count up the number of points in each quadrant. So at the end, you'll have a total. How many are in quadrant 1? How many points are in quadrant 2? Quadrant 3? And then, oops, I should use Roman numerals. Sorry about that. So how many are in quadrant 2? Quadrant 3? And quadrant 4. Sorry, that's a little messy, but hopefully you get the idea. Alright, pause the video if you need some time to copy that down.